All right then. Hello, welcome, bienvenue. It's time for another Amish Inquisition, episode 364, on Sunday, the 9th of February, 2025. I'm Phil.
I am Ben.
And I'm Matt.
And, do you know, I feel like slaying some sacred cows tonight.
Again?
Yeah. What do you think? Do you want to slay some cows, some health cows, some exercise cows?
Are we slaying the NHS?
If you like.
Okay.
Yes?
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Good, well, you're in luck, because tonight we're joined by Christian Yordanov. How you doing, Christian?
Hey guys, I'm good. Thank you so much for the invite.
No,
welcome.
it's. I was saying when I emailed you, I'm looking to do more health and wellness kind of shows. Like maybe aiming to do maybe one a month, just to mix things up a bit.
Ooh.
And obviously, we met very briefly years ago on the Union of the Unwanted, and I keep hearing Charlie talk about what you're doing. Charlie Robinson, that is, macroaggressions. And so I reached out to you. So yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming and joining us today.
always love doing this kind of stuff with like-minded individuals like yourselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for people who don't know you, haven't heard about your work and your website, why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself and what you do?
So I am a functional health practitioner, which basically means we use quote unquote the functional health paradigm, where we don't just look to make your boo-boo stop hurting for a while. We're looking like why do you have the boo-boo type stuff, you know? And I'm also an author. I've published a couple of books so far. My first one I published in 2020 on autism and children's health, and my latest book is on longevity. It's called How to Actually Live Longer, Volume 1, and I'm planning that to be a 3-part series. And the reason it's called How to Actually Live Longer is because I was just a little bit miffed with all these amazing, intelligent people out there just giving terrible advice. And like, if you look at some of these longevity books, it's 500 pages of flowery bullshit stories. And look who I know, my friends this, and I drive race cars, and yay me. And you're not really getting much of actual practical advice how to extend your life, but also extend your health span, optimize all that good stuff. So that's what prompted me to write that book. And that's kind of what I do. I work with, at the moment, mostly with adults, helping them resolve chronic health issues and optimize their health. That's kind of what I do now.
You mentioned something there that's actually my wife introduced to me, which is health span versus lifespan. So I'm just wondering if you could just tell us the difference between that, just in case people didn't know.
Yeah, so I start off my How to Actually Live Longer Volume 1 book with talking about my grandmother. She lived to the age of 84. She was my eldest surviving grandparent. And she did that without really knowing what even like vitamins and minerals really are, or amino acids. Like, she never knew that. I think she left school at the age of 13. And no, not that she left it. That's when it ended.
Yep.
Back in the villages in Bulgaria. And somehow she lived to longer than the current life expectancy of many Western countries, without knowing anything about nutrition, eating sunflower oil for much of her adult life, and being on multiple pharmaceutical drugs since her 50s. Somehow she managed to do that. So in terms of lifespan, she actually did really well, because there's no data on when she was born in the 1930s on life expectancy in Bulgaria. But I looked at some stats, and like, if you were born in the 1950s, I think your life expectancy would be like 59 years of age, something to that effect. So she lived 25 years longer than the life expectancy of someone born 20 years after her. Crazy stuff. Amazing when you look at it in terms of just stats. But to me, the last 10, 15 years of her life were like, okay, maybe not the last 15, but let's say the last 5 to 10 years of her life were basically just suffering and torture. So her health span was probably closer to maybe 50 years of age when the um, disease industry sunk its hooks into her with the blood pressure lowering meds, with the cholesterol lowering meds. It just starts there, and then you know the story there. So that's basically the difference. Is we can live a long time, but if we're on multiple symptom masking chemical concoctions for much of the last decade of our life, and we're debilitated, can't look after ourselves, that is that shows us that we can how long we live and how long we live with a good quality of life are different things, and the latter is health span.
Yeah, it's a term that I've noticed because, well, you and me, Matt, listen to Chris Williamson occasionally. I dip in and out, but I've noticed he gets guys like Andrew Huberman on and a few other these guys who've come to prominence through podcasting, it seems, and YouTube over the last few years, and it's one of those terms that has made its way into the popular paradigm, the cultural paradigm. And yeah, I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? To live as healthy as we can for as long as we can and just pop off in our sleep at the age of 90 with having taken no medication, having no ill health. But I mean, how can we hope to achieve that? And how much of this is due to just luck of the draw, like genetics and family history and all the rest of it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a lot of the disease care industry, a lot of what they're saying is most disease is genetic. There's nothing you can do about it. So all we can do is like mask your symptoms and improve your quality of life. But when you kind of look at it, how much of it is genetic, I think very little. The more I learn, the more I think this sort of the whole genetic thing is just a fairy tale that we grew up with, and that this is just some kind of like you said, sacred cow. A sacred cow, it's genetic, therefore nothing can be done. But when you look at it, most of the current diseases that people are suffering from in the Western world are basically a product of the deteriorated food supply, uh, obscenely high stress levels, um, just a 100,000 plus chemicals released into the environment, and you combine those things. What do you have? You have uh, poor nutrient status of people. So a lot of people have deficiencies in multiple things, or at the very least insufficiencies. A lot of people have a lot of toxic stuff going on, and that kind of feeds into the other one because it depletes you. And then stress is one of what I call in the book one of the primary, or it's one of the archetypal, sorry, it's one of the primary drivers of aging and dysfunction. Stress, whether that's psychological or physiological stress, it literally, most literally ages you prematurely and degenerates you. So if you look at current society, even like if you look at, like, again, my grandparents, the sort of life they lived tending the goats, maybe pigs, chickens, doing some stuff in the field. Maybe if you're lucky, you had a big field. Otherwise, you had a small garden, and a few animals, and you barter with your neighbors. And life was pretty good. You make your own wine and other sort of plum brandy, and life was pretty good. Air was pretty fresh, and then you could see it almost in their lifetime. So then they were living in that sort of surrounding environment. In the 80s, they moved to the big city, to the capital city, in an apartment. My granddad got sedentary, and like the last 30 years of his life, he was basically in his armchair reading, watching TV, stuff like that. And you could just see what he used to be like: fit, strong, all that good stuff. Everyone was like resilient. And you could see just what that lifestyle did to them in their lifetime. And now, me being born in the 80s, for example, this is all we know for the most part: the new world, the new normal. And I think that is something that, if we understand what are the challenges of the current modern environment, modern world, if we understand what they are, what they're doing to us, this is where we have a chance to actually do something about them, and basically correct any imbalances, as many as we have control over, so that the modern world doesn't take as much of it will still take some kind of a toll on us, because right now, I'm not surrounded by Wi-Fi specifically here, but most of us, we have Wi-Fi, phones. There's certain things we will never be able to avoid. So it's all about just mitigating what we can mitigate and not worrying too much about the rest that we can't control, because that would create additional stress, which again accelerates aging and degeneration.
Seems to me that one of the biggest factors that's within our own hands is the fuel that we take in, what we eat and what we drink. And again, going back to movements that have grown in popularity recently, you've got things like intermittent fasting, you've got the lion diet, people looking to get into ketosis. I'm gonna eat meat and splurge out on chocolate once a month. I'm gonna live like a monk for 29 days a month, and then on that last day, I'm gonna get smashed and gorge on chocolate because I've earned it, because I've been such a good boy and all this. And these sort of fad diets, I guess it started with Atkins back in the, was it late 70s, early 80s? So let's concentrate on diet for a bit, and maybe what we're doing wrong and what truth or myth is behind these sort of fad diets and lifestyles that are popular at the moment.
Yeah, it seems like it's every decade there's a different theme. You had low fat in the 80s, oh my God, it's great. I remember when I was kind of getting into fitness in like the late 2000s, 2008, that time period. At that point, it was about eating 6 meals a day to stoke the metabolic fire. And then it was what was it, the guy, I forget the name of the guy with the warrior diet, 1 meal a day. And I think it's the just something mundane and generic is just too boring for us nowadays, that we have to figure out it has to be something crazy. But talking about low carb diets, in my book I have a whole chapter on this. About 1/5 of the book is dedicated to why low carb diets are actually not actually the solution to all of our problems. And uh, it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of people, myself included, you find a diet and suddenly that diet has to now become like your personality or who you are. Like I remember in 2016, I for the second time I kind of went plant-based vegan. And I was all over Facebook. It's so embarrassing, dude. I was all over Facebook about the virtues of plant-based bollocks and this, and oh, it's so embarrassing. And then 2 years later, I unbrainwashed myself. Then I went into keto, but this time I was like too smart for that. I'm not gonna like, let me see how this goes. I'm not gonna tell everybody about how good keto is, right? But I started making fun of my vegan friends on Facebook, and um I did keto for a while. I did carnivore, dude. I did raw carnivore. I was there like eating raw liver and raw lamb, and I was cooking like some kind of a soup with lamb, and I was like eating it raw. And then I gave myself parasites, and then I had to deal with like this whole parasite issue. But a lot of people I see they're still stuck in 2018 when the bulletproof coffees were a thing, butter in the coffee, Dave
Yeah.
Asprey's whole thing,
MCT oil.
Yeah. And like people are just now getting into the stuff that we were doing 7 8 years ago. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, you're gonna make those same mistakes. I'm hoping that you can learn from my mistakes. That's why I do the book, the podcast, stuff like that. So why is the keto, let's just talk about low carb and keto for a few minutes. So keto, why is this not an optimal diet to engage in? And before I even get into that, I understand many people are getting good results with keto. Similarly, a lot of people are getting good results with vegan or plant-based or whatever. The reason people get good results from these diets is, and for example, in the case of keto, what most people are doing is they're removing a lot of garbage foods from their diet. They're removing a lot of grains and just stuff that's really not good for you. They're becoming more intentional about what they eat. And here's the thing: low carb, high fat, high protein diets like carnivore keto, they are satiating. So lo and behold, you clean up the diet, you eat more real foods, and then you eat less because you're more satiated with less. So of course you're gonna lose a bunch of weight on keto. But here's the thing: when someone goes keto, and cures their diabetes? Was it the keto diet, or was it all the weight that they lost from the caloric deficit that was imposed by the diet? So if they had used any other means to lose the weight, which there are many less stressful ways to do it, they would have gotten very similar results. So that's what I tell people is I get it. Like when I went on keto, I lost a bunch of weight. Good stuff happened, but that was because the preceding period, we were very busy. I was in college, had a full-time job, blah blah blah, and I was eating garbage food everywhere I went because I was not at home to cook. So that's kind of the thing. But here's the thing about keto. Some people know that the keto diet was sort of designed to help children with epilepsy. But how did this come about? So they noticed that when someone is starving, they have less seizures for whatever reason. So then they figured out that the ketogenic diet, by having high fat, moderate amount of protein, very little carbohydrate, will mimic starvation. So the body, you kind of tricking the body into thinking it's starving, therefore it starts to make ketones. And that's kind of cool to help children with epilepsy and stuff, and maybe in certain more kind of neurological problem type cases. But the thing is, and I think this is just something that's super logical when you kind of think about it, is do you think signaling to the body it's in a state of famine, starvation, long term, is going to be beneficial? Like, this is what, like, you have to kind of philosophically ask yourself, do you think starving, telling your body you are starving chronically for months on end is going to be beneficial? And of course, the answer is no, right? So I think that's kind of the issue. It's not that people don't get good results with the diet. If you use it for intelligently for a few months, you can, accelerate, for example, fat loss and just get yourself out of a hump. But then you have to have a plan for what's the next step. And most people, they think this is it. I found Mecca. It's like the vegan, the plant-based stuff. When I went plant-based, man, in 2016, uh, I lost 10 kilograms in 3 months. I was down to 72 kilograms. I had a six pack. I was training for a Thai boxing fight as well, so that helped a lot, kind of. But you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And then a few months later, joint pain, injuries, slow recovery. I started gaining the weight back. It just there's a honeymoon period with these diets that most people don't realize it's time to get out. That's kind of the big issue that low carb does to people.
So, am I right in saying, tell me if you sort of agree with this statement, that when it comes to your diet, it's not necessarily the composition in regards fat, protein, carbs, and that balance. It's more to do with the quality.
Well, I think there's definitely a lot to be said for the composition in terms of macros, right?
Right.
I think it's actually, funnily enough, if you eat a lot of fat and you're at a sort of at maintenance and above maintenance, so in terms of how many calories you're eating, that's the easiest way to gain fat. Because to store fat, all you have to do is, when you're digesting fat, you're breaking it down, the triglycerides into fatty acids. You kind of transport them across the gut, and then you repackage them into triglycerides, and then they start getting, transported around the body. At that point, just a fat cell has to pick it up, and boom, it's stored. But if you eat carbohydrates, the body, if there's dietary fat coming in, the body is not gonna turn carbohydrates into fat. This is such a another massive myth, that if you eat fructose, it turns into fatty liver. And if you eat carbs at night, they all turn to fat. Like, if you look at it, what is known as de novo lipogenesis, so making new fat out of carbohydrates, that accounts for like 1 to 2% of the fat we accumulate on, we store in a day. And even they've done um, overfeeding studies where they overfeed people for days on end with like 500 to 700 grams of carbohydrate. And even then, only 10 to 20% of those carbohydrates actually get stored as fat. So this is what people don't right now. It's not that they don't understand it. I think we knew that back in like the 80s and the 90s, but some kind of agenda switched the stuff. There seems to be a very lucrative agenda for pushing high fat, low carb diets right now, which we can discuss later if you're tinfoil hat theory type you have those inclinations. But this is what people have to understand. If you eat a lot of fat, you're very likely going to store a lot of that fat. We don't actually need, especially if you can burn carbohydrates well, if you don't have the metabolic dysfunction, which of course a lot of people have. So you don't need that much fat, and you don't really need a lot of protein. And when I say a lot of protein, most people are probably under eating protein in general. But 1 gram per pound of body weight, or 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, that kind of range is a decent amount. And then
every hour.
The rest was that? Would you say that's a lot?
No, I said, is that every hour you eat that?
Yeah. So for like a normal guy, maybe 150 to 200 grams of protein per day. That's more than enough. I think this is another thing about the carnivore that sort of is pretty kind of frustrating to listen to. Is they're like, oh, but like there's no such thing as in the physiology books. They say, this is the quote. Sorry, they say there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate in the physiology textbooks. So this is what I hear some keto guys. So therefore, so there's no physiological need. So it's not that there's no physiological need for carbohydrate. It's just nutritionally speaking, it's not an essential nutrient because the body can synthesize it, right? So they're kind of blurring the line between physiological need for carbohydrate, and nutritionally, can we do without it, right? So we have certain amino acids that are essential. We can't make them. Others are non-essential. We can make them, but they're still essential for our functioning. We'll die without them.
Right.
Similarly, actually, fun fact, water is not nutritionally essential in the body. You can actually make water from fat in the body. But if I come and tell you there's no such thing as essential water, you think I'm a mad person, right? Because you know you need some kind of liquids replenishment on a daily basis. So just like glucose, if you don't get glucose from the diet or carbohydrate, the body has many pathways to making glucose, which kind of doesn't that sort of speak to how important it is if it has multiple ways and multiple stress hormones. So at least I think 4 stress hormones can upregulate glucose production: cortisol, glucagon, adrenaline, whatever else. So we have glucose is so essential. We will actually sacrifice our own lean tissue, our bones, our skin, our joints, anything that has collagen, organs, anything that has amino acids will potentially be sacrificed to make glucose, because the brain runs on glucose, and then it will run on ketones if you're in ketosis. But still, you can only ketones can only account for like 60 to 70% of the total energy you're gonna use up in a whole day. So you will always make some glucose. So glucose is super important. We have multiple ways to make it in the body. So I think if you starve the body of it, right? If you only supply a limited amount, it will make up some of the deficits for the most important functions, and then a bunch of stuff will go without. So I think this is where a lot of people are leaving a lot of health on the table, because you might be doing okay with a low carb diet, and the body will use like fat oxidation for a lot of processes, but you could do a lot better, because like the testes use glucose, the eyes use glucose, the brain uses glucose, the red blood cells can only use glucose, the immune system thrives on glucose. If you remove a bunch of this carbohydrate, let's say for like an 80 kilogram man, you need maybe 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrate to thrive. Let's say you're doing keto or low carb, maybe you're doing 100 or 150. You will survive, but just think of how many functions are going to be working less than the optimal. And I'll tell you, when I started introducing more carbohydrates into my diet, all of a sudden, almost, my eyesight improved. I could not believe it. And I've had clients tell me that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I tell you what, before we get on to like exercise or other topics, everyone in the chat, as soon as you mention tinfoil, everyone in the chat will want to know what the story is behind why these fad diets keep being introduced and monetized. What's your take on all that?
I mean, I think most people that tune into the show know why. I'm just gonna probably repeat what you all already kind of know, but I think it's because if you so quick uh quick aside before I get into that. If I ask you what causes diabetes from the diet, what would your answer be?
Sugar.
Yeah.
Sugar. So it, exactly. And we're almost like this sort of Pavlovian instinct. If I say, what's the happy hormone? What's the happy chemical?
Serotonin?
There you go. What's the female hormone?
Estrogen.
There you go. So we can continue like this in quite a lot of different examples. So the what's interesting is just today I'm doing a presentation for this masterclass I'm gonna be recording soon, and I have the study also cited in my book, but there's a study with the protocol that researchers use to induce diabetes in lab animals like rats, and the protocol, guess what? It uses a high fat diet, right?
Wow.
Yes, and it, it, it between 40, like listen to this, 40% fat in the diet is already enough to start increasing insulin resistance. So even like a 60% fat diet will in a few weeks make the rats insulin resistant, right? And then so that's how to induce sort of type 2 diabetes, where it's a lot of why do a lot of overweight people have diabetes and then they lose weight and they the diabetes goes away? It's because when you have a lot of fat on the body or in the from the diet, that actually, when it's in the bloodstream, can outcompete glucose to get into the cell and to be oxidized for energy. So why, for just as an example of the low carb diet, why are they pushing low carb diets? Well, I believe personally, if you get all of these young people, especially younger people, onto the low carb diets, for example, and it starts creating dysfunction that takes years and decades to really manifest as true disease, you're feeding the beast. You're kind of feeding the disease industry. And if another example is, if you look at like an SSRI drug, you might be like, oh, that's just kind of like to milk people for the thing. But there's such an insidious part to the SSRIs, which we're thinking about doing a whole documentary about, is the serotonin in the body actually drives a process of scarification in the organs called fibrosis. And this is a precursor stage to cancer. So to me, it's like, maybe I've just been listening to too many tinfoil hat type podcasts, but if you give someone in their 30s, 40s an antidepressant that drives fibrosis, gradually over time, in 20 years time, you're just feeding another industry. So honestly believe this is why a lot of this stuff, for example, the ice baths, this is another thing. Why is the ice bath thing so big? Yeah, it's anti-inflammatory, but what's the mechanism? The mechanism of an ice bath is the adrenaline and the cortisol. When they spike, they suppress the immune system. So that's why it's an anti-inflammatory effect, because the immune system is not making inflammation. But is that truly the way to resolve a problem with a lot of inflammation? It's a symptom masking
Right.
trick. And what happens when you have a suppressed immune system for a long time? The worst thing is cancer. So, that hopefully that explains why I think everybody already knew what I was gonna say.
Yes, I think so. But there's another question as well from the good lady Helen, which was, what's the best time for dinner? So that would be the evening meal, because she's from down south. Yeah.
Does
Or
it,
is there a
does it,
best
does it
time?
matter?
Does it matter? Yeah, for timings of meals, I guess.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a lot of clients that have sleep problems, and the first thing I tell them to do is just have a little bit of honey before bed, and a lot of the time, that is enough to resolve that issue. We don't even have to, like, the supplements help and stuff, but if you can't solve a problem with diet, sometimes it's a more complex issue. So I think you have to eat in a way where you are able to sleep well. If you eat too early and then you can't fall asleep because you're too hungry, bad. If you eat too late and then you can't fall asleep because your stomach is full, bad. So everybody kind of has to figure out for themselves what is a good timing. And then I think a lot of and I made this mistake myself, so I'm not like judging anyone out there or anything, but we would not eat carbs at dinner because carbs get stored as fat. And like I said earlier, carbs don't actually get stored as fat. If you overeat carbs, you are gonna store the dietary fat that you ate for the most part. The carbs won't really get stored as fat. Not so. So I'm not saying that you just eat as much carbs as you want and everything will be dandy. You will stir if you overeat in the aggregate. Of course, it's gonna be there's gonna be fat deposition, but again, it will be from the carbs. So what I think is very important for people to remember is your just 4 organs account for 60% of your energy expenditure in a day. Your heart,
Wow.
your brain, was it liver, and the kidneys? They account for 60% of the energy you produce. So when you go to sleep, I mean, those things basically work. You expend pretty much the same sort of energy from those organs, right? So skipping the carbs at dinner, and I don't mean like crappy pasta and pizza. I mean cleaner carbs, obviously. But skipping the carbs, I think, is a mistake a lot of people are making out there that is costing them um, a lot of repair and regeneration. Because if let's say you eat dinner at 8 and you go to bed at 11, and you didn't eat a lot of carbs, by the time it's like 2 3 in the morning, you're already kind of your liver is depleted from glycogen, which is kind of its storage place for glucose, which is used to maintain your blood sugar level, keep your brain basically functioning. So if you deplete your glycogen earlier in the night, it means stress hormones will have to kick in to pick up the slack, glucagon and eventually cortisol and then adrenaline. And not only can that wake you up and then it's hard to fall back asleep, but at the very least, it will make repair and regenerate. It will kind of halt repair and regeneration because that's what cortisol does. It's like it's an emergency hormone. When it's elevated, repair regeneration kind of are paused so that immediate survival, aka making blood sugar or making sugar or glucose, is kind of the number one priority. So I think a lot of folks are shooting themselves in the foot by eating dinner like a pauper, which is what we were taught as kids. I think you probably know that one.
Breakfast like a king, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And dinner is a pauper. Yes, I've heard that one. Make it
Yeah.
less
To me.
and less throughout the day. You not heard that one?
No, I'm
Right. Okay.
totally out of the loop on all that.
I might have just completely missed the explanation there. Please tell me if I have. But why would a spoonful of honey be helpful for sleep?
God, it's like my grandma used to say that. Spoonful of
'Cause
honey.
Mary Poppins said so, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Fair enough. It's because
Did you know that the Mary Poppins spoonful of sugar is apparently they were drinking turpentine, and the spoonful of sugar. Yeah.
no. Well, there was. You used to get a polio vaccine, and they dripped it onto a sugar cube. So I thought it was something to do with that, basically.
I thought it because when I was at the Narcopuco last year,
Might have been.
Andy Kaufman was talking about pure gum spirits of turpentine being a really good sort of
Right.
remedy. So one of my clients actually told me that that's a spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down is when you're taking the turpentine. I don't know.
Might be.
I believe
Yeah,
anything.
the polio thing might be a little bit later. I was born in the 80s, so
Yeah.
Mary
Same.
Poppins was a bit before then.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
I guess you must have boys then if you haven't heard the Poppins music, MK Ultra stuff for months on end.
yeah. Definitely got boys.
We're on Moana now, so it's okay.
Yeah. Moana was good. I enjoyed
Yeah,
the first Moana.
I
yeah.
like the second
It's,
one as well.
it's the music that's just makes me want to end myself because it's like literally one song on repeat for months on end at this point.
Ah,
so
right. Okay.
Disney,
okay.
Yes.
Disney
yeah.
inspired.
I don't need all
self-deletion.
those brain cells.
Yes. Yeah. No,
Who needs all of them? Who needs all of those hundreds of brain cells in there?
You're right there,
I forgot your
Ben.
question.
Yeah, then.
Sorry.
Honestly, Matt.
It was just about the honey. Why would the honey
It's,
be helpful for
yeah,
Yeah,
sleep?
yeah.
Yeah.
What's
So
the
I
mechanism?
heard Crow 777 on his show actually say that I don't listen to him. I haven't yet delved into his show, but just one time I was like listening, and somehow by the grace of God, I heard that. I mean, I was already recommending that to clients for a while, but that's where the phrase "sweet dreams" comes from.
Oh,
I
right.
don't
Okay.
I don't know the origin, but
Mhm.
what it does. So honey basically is 50 roughly 50 fructose and glucose. So if you, like I said, if you go to bed, your liver has a certain capacity for, let's say, glucose in the form of glycogen. Let's say 100 grams for like a regular man. If you're at 50% capacity, half full, the tank is half full, going to bed, it will be that much sooner before your stress hormone system will have to come in to kind of start mobilizing glucose and making glucose, or prompting the other organs to make glucose. So if you top yourself up with some couple of tablespoons of honey, you're that the first place that will go is the liver. And if the liver is full, at that point then it will extend it out to, the muscles, other organs and stuff like that. So the liver always kind of takes the first dibs on the glucose. So this is a way to ensure your liver is topped up so you can go the longest throughout the night without, or before the stress hormone system has to sort of start picking up the slack, which invariably it will. Like sooner or later your blood sugar will start dropping because the liver glycogen levels will start to fall, and that's when cortisol will rise. And the longer you can sort of delay that, the better off you'll be, because cortisol is a degenerative hormone. It binds to cells that are part of lean tissue, like again, like your skin, your joints, your muscles, your bones, cartilage, and organs, and even parts of the brain. So cortisol degenerates those tissues so they can be sacrificed to make glucose. It's an emergency survival hormone. So this is my strategy for longevity, is very aggressive stress reduction. And by that I mean, like, I literally use like supplementation to physically lower cortisol and keep it as low as possible through as much of the 24-hour period as possible, because I know things are going to piss me off. Like today, chat gpt pissing me off, giving me World Health Organization freaking. I told ChatGPT, listen, from now on, I do not want you to tell me anything that the World Health Organization recommends. I don't care what they recommend, guy. So anyway, I was like these kind of things will raise your cortisol. So I just teach people, don't raise your cortisol unnecessarily, because the modern world is going to raise your stress hormones anyway. So when the way we eat, the way we sort of, you were talking about exercise, Phil, the way we do these things is just try to keep it as chill as possible, because your kids, your work, things will stress you out. There's no need to add additional stress on your body by fasting and this all this sort of stuff.
Yes, yeah. Let's pivot to exercise, because this is an important pillar for health and longevity, I think. Cardio is all the rage, particularly in January after Christmas. You see everyone get their new lycra suits on and start running up and down the road. And I think I would say the prevailing narrative is that the heart is a muscle. And so if you exercise that muscle, you're going to make it stronger. Therefore, you're going to live longer. Agree or disagree, Christian?
This is such a touchy subject. I'm going to have to cross my fingers and say I agree,
Okay.
because I don't agree.
Okay.
I really don't agree. And if you kind of, this is, I'm planning a whole big chapter on this in the second edition, or in the second, sorry, volume of the How to Actually Live Longer series. I don't think so. I think if you look at stuff with athletes and athletes' heart and heart enlargements, and I I don't think I think a little bit of cardio, quote unquote, is good. Exercise is good, but I think here's what's really good. Here's what's really good. What the best thing you can do for your body is to basically move a lot throughout the day in kind of natural sort of environments, and things. Whatever, climb a tree, jump over whatever bush, just kind of natural move, bend down, pick things up, kind of play with your kids. The more of this kind of movement you do, the less quote unquote formal exercise you need, because it's pretty evident. I think all of the sort of the Peter or Tia, all these guys that will agree that that's a million times. Okay, a million. I've told you a million times not to exaggerate, Christian. Um, that's a hell of a lot better than sitting at a desk all day and then going for intense exercise 1 hour out of that day, even if it's, even if the same calories were burnt or whatever. So I think if we can design our lives, and even, I'm not necessarily saying like you have to like quit your job and like find a job that you can do that, but even like here, I'm just trying to, because dude, I can sit here with my bladder bursting like for 3 hours doing stuff, and I know it's really not good. So more and more I've been trying to like just integrate. For example, I have like um, Olympic rings where I can just hang in one place of the house. Another place I have a vibration plate, and I've set up a laptop there so I can work there while I'm on the vibration plate. I just got this like it's called a Hyper Pro. It's like this machine where you can do all these kind of cool exercises that are strengthen your core, your hamstrings. So just kind of like integrating more and more these things into the environment, even if it's like if you have you're walking down the stairs to go to the bathroom between, being on the computer, just having like some dumbbells there so you can like spend 2 minutes, or like some elastic, something to stretch, a foam roller. So I think that's what most of us in the modern world that have these sort of like sit down jobs, we have to integrate more activity into our lives that's not super stressful, because to be perfectly frank with you, I don't think uh a lot of cardio that's like elevating our heart rate to like 140 plus for 30-40 minutes at a time, I don't think that has real any benefit. If anything, I would probably say that's more damaging, and the older you get, the more the more damaging that will be, because the older we get, the less, for most of us, the less resilient we tend to become to stressors. So when you're young, the reason exercise is awesome is because it causes an increase in cortisol, adrenaline, these norepinephrine, these stress hormones, but it's met with a concomitant sort of increase in protective hormones, DHEA, pregnenolone, progesterone, testosterone, stuff like that. So we kind of have a lot of adaptive reserve. That's why, you make gains faster as a 20-year-old. You recover faster. You do squats. The next morning, you wake up with morning wood that will not go away for like 45 minutes. You can't get out of bed. So the older we get, the less these things we're able to sort of adapt well to, and the more damaging they become. So a lot of clients that come to me obviously have fairly serious health problems. So I just tell them, look, for now, go for a walk, and if you want to do some resistance training, do some, but like 20 minutes here and there, and you will know when the time is right to do more. But a lot of people, what they do is they they waste a lot of their daily energy on exercise, where that could have gone towards other things, towards maintaining other functions in the body. So I think most people are not just to kind of summarize. I don't think most people in the at least kind of like the average person is not really so nutritionally, their nutritional status isn't that good. Their stress levels are not super optimized. They don't sleep super well. They don't eat super well. They don't supplement their diet well. So they're not really a good candidate for a lot of exertion. If you do a lot of exertion, you have to dial in all of those things. That's what I'll say to people. Not that I don't recommend doing, like I play tennis and paddle here sometimes 4 or 5 times a week. I go to Pilates
Wow.
once a week. I have my own sort of ever increasing home gym here. I just bought my wife a Pilates reformer, so I'm gonna turn our garage into a Pilates studio. So I'm not saying just sit there and vegetate all day, but just don't stress the body, move the body, and increase ability, and that's what's beneficial. It's not like just sweating and like all of these guys waking up at 5 in the morning and oh my god, look at me, look at all my sweat, look at all my blood and tears. I'm so tough, I'm a big guy. That's bullshit, man. That's ego bullshit, and the algorithm is playing it on us because they know how to push our buttons as guys. Sorry,
Yeah.
ranting.
You see, the thing that I always think about with the runners and the joggers is I just feel like it's probably really bad for your joints, for your knees and your hips and your ankles to be pounding like that.
Not to mention you're jogging in traffic as well.
Oh yeah, and
Breathing
inhaling
in
all
the
that.
fumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Oh, it's so sad to see those. I saw everyone like in January. You see like these two guys and this gal, and the girl was like behind like 10 meters, and they're like, "Come on, come on!" I was like, I wanted to just like stop the car. I'm like, guys, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, let's go home, you idiots. What are you doing to her? But yeah, it's not necessary, man.
Again, it's
Who in like 100 years ago, who like from our parents, grandparents, who was out there doing this kind of stuff? You just life caused you to move and do stuff. You didn't. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, especially going back sort of pre-industrial, where we were an agrarian societies. We all worked on farms, super fit, super strong, super tired at the end of the day, and that'll help you sleep as well. When you're physically tired. Again, it's sort of dispelling another one of these fashionable things, this HIIT, high intensity training, which has become popular, where people go absolutely ape shit for a minute and then have a minute rest and then go ape shit for a minute. And
yeah,
again, I guess you're going to say that's just raising your stress hormones again and putting you into sort of fight and flight response.
And I'm seeing a recent trend, kind of these more. I don't like. I wasn't following. So here's the thing. A lot of us have been misled to think that being fit means you're healthy. But you have to remember it's health and fitness. And you can be relatively unfit but still very metabolically healthy, and you can be very fit and very unhealthy. Look at a bodybuilder, look at like a long distance runner, um, physique competitors, just a ton of different sort of a lot of athletes that are shortening their lives doing like ultra running. So you can be very fit, but in a very precarious state of health. So, Jesus Christ, I lost my train of thought there. What was your question?
I was just thinking, I think what you're getting at is like, take the marathon runners, for example. If you watch the London Marathon and see the guys who are running the races, they don't look healthy. They look like they're about to drop down dead. But I think what you're getting at is more to do with sort of strength and resilience and maybe less to do with endurance, like being able to run 27 miles.
Oh yeah, yeah. Your question was about HIIT. Yeah, so I don't follow a lot of the fitness channels in general, the influencers. Just lately, I've been doing it because I just kind of am for a research project I'm doing at the moment. So what I've noticed is all the kind of the big fitness gurus, the bodybuilders, and these kind of channels on YouTube. They're actually not that they're shunning now HIIT, but it's a bit passe, the HIIT stuff, because what they so a lot, at least when it comes to weight loss, it seems like, so they used to say that you do HIIT and then you have the afterburn, the APOC, the post exercise energy or oxygen consumption or stuff like that. And it turns out that when you do crazy sport exercise, HIIT, hard cardio, whatever, it turns out that a lot of people, their body sort of auto-regulates, and the rest of the day their non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, NEAT, goes down. So, and I've noticed this myself, if I go and play tennis first thing in the morning for like 60 to 90 minutes, the rest of the day I'm useless, and I'm almost like I don't move around as much. So I think HIIT, a lot of now the more physique athletes, bodybuilders, many of them are not doing the stuff. They're just doing walking, just walking. And okay, some of them are doing like incline on a treadmill, but just walking alone is how a lot of these guys are. What they're doing to get shredded, because what it does is if you just walk and keep increasing your walking, you don't actually get tired. So it will allow you to. That's probably the easiest, the fastest way to start actually, like, getting a little bit fitter, losing a little bit of body fat without sort of it destroying your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, because what they found is between two people of the same weight and everything, all those parameters, their caloric expenditure of from non-exercise activity thermogenesis can be as much as 2000 calories. So it seems like that is probably one of the biggest ways that you can influence how many calories you expend. Therefore, start recompositioning your body with sort of minimal caloric restriction, minimal sort of crazy exertion. So I think that's another thing that people are copying onto is like, yeah, you're gonna spend all this energy, gonna burn so many more calories in that session, but then the rest of the day your body's compensating almost unconsciously, subconsciously for all that you did, and you're useless to yourself and everybody around you.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, sort of moving the exercise equation over to longevity. What's sort of the optimal thing? What we're looking for? I mean, we're all the same age. We're in our early 40s. You know, if we want to increase our health span, what are the key sort of areas as far as exercise or physicality? What we're looking at? What do we need to get to?
I, are you just talking about exercise right now?
Yeah, just for, well, you can broaden it out if you want to, but
Because I would say what's way more important than exercise, and this is what like guys like Peter Attia that really irks me. I think he is a PhD as well as an MD. He's like, oh, I believe exercise is the most important thing for health, and I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? Just because you don't wanna offend anyone, he wants to appeal to everybody. He won't say anything specific about diet, and I honestly believe that diet is where it's at. We have to genuinely like take a list of here's all the foods that are available to us. Some of these must not be on the menu, at least not most of the time. I think the diet is where it's at, man. I think I lost you guys.
We're
still here.
We're still here.
Oh,
Just Phil slipped off his chair and
I was blown away. I was totally blown away. Sorry.
And
Carry on.
Yeah, so I think it's the diet is where it's at, man. Like this is the most important thing that, mm, because like I said, if you can just integrate more activity into your life, into your lifestyle, into your daily routine, that kind of, for the most part, takes care of the movement, because you have to be moving, right? Because we know that sitting is pretty horrible, just driving, sitting, all the stuff, being on the couch. So even like if you're watching, let's say if you're watching TV or something, have a foam roller there and be on the floor, and okay, you're watching whatever, but you're like doing some foam rolling, maybe some of those kind of balls that you can kind of do some glute release, piriformis release, stuff like that. But I think so. Like, here's the thing: I see a lot of guys out there like working really hard on the activity side of things, but I'm not seeing much effort being put into like the environment, the home environment, the light situation, protecting yourself from blue light, smart supplementation, cleaning up the diet. This is I honestly believe this is the number one thing, though. We can discuss all the other things, EMF, sort of reduction, um, grounding, sun exposure. All of those things are important. But if the diet is not done right, this is the biggest source of, can be the biggest source of toxicity and eventual health problems. Because if you look at just an American sort of standard American diet, a lot of Americans, and I mean a lot of Westerners or Western Europeans as well, are getting easily throughout the day, easily they're getting 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 grams of polyunsaturated fats, man. And that is probably one of the big, I know it's this the whole seed oil, everybody's talking about seed oils. I don't want to be like that old chestnut, but this is something like I've had days where I eat 4,500 calories and I've tracked my diet, and my polyunsaturated fat intake is under 3 grams. Like most people are nowhere near that, man. Some people are eating 2,000 calories, and 400 of those calories are seed oils. That's a recipe for all the diseases you can think of.
No, it's funny you just brought up USA and we're talking about diet. What do you make of all this hubbub over RFK and make America healthy again and all that? Are you optimistic for the future of Americans, or do you think he's a shell or what?
I didn't know I just had two choices, but that's politics, right?
Yeah, it's black or white.
I think his heart is in the right place, but it's you're up against a bunch of different intertwined industries and stuff. So I think it's another example where people are like, oh, RFK is gonna get healthy for me. Like there's just the beautiful sort of scam of ceding our responsibility for what's RFK gonna do? Like, what's he gonna do for the average person out there? What the average person needs to do is have a little bit of sort of agency, and they have to want. Like, we can't get. Like, sometimes I'll have like the spouse of a person book a call with me on their behalf. Nowadays, if they tell me that upfront, I always cancel that call. I'm saying, look, I'm sorry, but we'd just all be wasting our time. We can't want this for your spouse. We can't get healthy for them. Therefore, let's not waste each other's time. And this is the thing. I honestly don't believe that everybody right now is going. I don't want to sound sort of pessimistic, because if I wasn't optimistic, I wouldn't be working in this field. I'm trying to make things better and be a part of the solution. But I believe most people, the trajectory they're on, the momentum they have, is probably too strong to reverse meaningfully in their lifetime. And I think that's okay. I think in an infinite perhaps universe, that's whatever, all possibilities must sort of, God must, the creator must experience all possibilities, from the most magical and beautiful to the most sort of dark and whatever. So maybe some of us are here to that end, for the creator to experience itself, herself, itself, they, they, whatever, in all of the myriad of possibilities. And some of it is gonna not end well for many people. Other people are gonna like see what it's like to be at the end of the line of this dark path, and then to kind of see the light and return back to whatever. But unfortunately, there seems to be like some kind of a point of no return. I find, like, with people, after, if you leave it past about 60 to 65 years of age, I think at that point there's a point of no return at that point. So
thank God for that. I've got 20 years, 20 years to get my shit together.
Said like a true dude.
Well, yeah, well, I mean,
yeah, I apologize if that's not the answer people want to hear, but I think people, like, unless shit's falling apart all around them, they will not do anything, unfortunately.
No.
Right,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's,
And I mean, the fact
sad thing.
you mentioned, going back to RFK, the fact you mentioned that you were at an Acapulco recently, I expect we're on the same page in that people can't wait for a politician to help them. They've got to help themselves, and
Absolutely.
not wait for the nanny
Absolutely.
state to hold your hand and guide you and tell you what to eat and what to exercise and all the rest
Well,
of
they
it.
already do.
You've got to take responsibility for your own health. That's a key message, I think, Christian, isn't it?
Yeah, man. And like, this is the other thing is, like, with our kids, it's like, why would you have to wait for him to get the mercury and aluminum out of the vaccines? Like, why should that be, like, how many layers of, like, action can you take between that happening and like your current you know what I mean? Like, that's just one example of, like, why must there be a sugar tax, or like or an alcohol tax, or a cigarette tax? Like, if we know the thing is bad for us, we must change the reality. We must use our power to change the world around us. That's what humans are really good at. So why should we? But this is another thing that I think when you kind of switch on to this sort of more, anarchist, agorist, libertarian type mentality, then you're like thinking, how can I sort of decouple this X from, be that the state, the medical, the food supply, blah blah blah. You just start thinking of financial industry, and I think that's another thing that most of us, because not and through no fault of our own, but that's just the reality is we grow up, we're conditioned, and that is the prison that we then live inside for the rest of our lives. And it's like the Matrix, it's very well designed, and it works really well, and it almost doesn't even care for now that the few here and there sort of break out and kind of do whatever, because it's such a behemoth that it's almost like a fly that it doesn't even have to swat it away. It's so tiny that it's unnoticeable, which is actually, maybe it's an opportunity, because then you can just carve out your own little spot and hopefully not be bothered for the rest of it.
Well, Christian, we've gone just over an hour already. We should wrap this up, but first of all, you should tell everyone watching and listening how they can follow you, what services you offer, tell them about the website, all that good stuff.
Appreciate it, lads. This was a great conversation. So my podcast is How to Actually Live Longer, like the book How to Actually Live Longer. And then, I think that's probably the best place if you want to kind of hear me talk and ramble more about these things. If you didn't get sick of me, that's like my place where I just share my findings every few weeks I find new sort of stuff that we were lied about health. So that's probably a good place to, if you listen to podcasts already, that's a good place to connect with me. And if you need help with your health, there'll be a link there on how to kind of get in touch with me, and we can kind of take next steps there.
Is that the Live Longer formula one?
livelongerformula.com, yeah.
Right, so there's a link in the show notes for that if you want to go straight to the website. So
yeah,
brilliant. Well, we should wrap this up. This has been fabulous.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah,
thank you so much, guys. This was fun. Hopefully, I didn't dominate the conversation too much. I apologize.
No, that's what we like.
No, that's
we
the
love
idea.
to be dominated.
Yeah, we're such sussy subs, aren't we?
Yeah.
Absolute bitches. Stamp on me, Christian. Right.
No, it's the thing when you do a lot of solo podcasts like I've done over the last few months. I'm used to now running my mouth for 45 minutes straight until my tonsils are gonna explode out of my throat. So I have to remind myself, okay, stop talking so other people can ask questions and chime in, so.
No, it's good. I think we covered loads in an hour. Absolutely loads of stuff. And there's lots more to go at, so maybe we'll do this again in future, But it's been great. Yeah. Check out the links to the show notes, folks, and follow Christian wherever he is online.
Yeah.
And we'll be back in about 10 minutes to open the phone lines.
Oh,
maybe you want to tell us about your health problems.
Don't do that.
We'll just send you a link to Christian's website.
Yeah.
Right, this has been fab. Thanks, Christian. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, bye.
Back soon, folks.
Yeah.